everyone, it's me Luthfia. Today we are going to learn about a century of language teaching. There are some topics that we are going to learn. The concept of approach, method, and procedure or technique, methods in early years, methods in designer era, and methods in dawning new era. Let's start with the concept of approach, methods, and technique. Do you know what is the difference among approach, method, and technique? Approach is a set of assumptions dealing with the nature of language, learning, and teaching, while method is pedagogical practices of an approach, and techniques are specific activities that consistent with method and approach. So basically, approach deals with assumption or belief of the language or learning. Method deals with the practical application of an approach. And technique deals with the specific activities that consistent or in line with approach and method. Here is the example. For example, the teacher will base their teaching on a humanistic approach. The appropriate method based on humanistic approach is Suggestopedia. And the activities that include in Suggestopedia are playing music while reading. So that is about approach, method, and technique. Let's move to the next topic, the methods in early years. There are some methods that became popular in the early years. What are they? The first is classical method and grammar translation method. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the classical method was adopted as the chief means for the teaching foreign language. The classical method was chosen because at that time the main focus of teaching foreign language is reading. So what is classical method? Classical method is a method that based on the teacher-centered learning with memorization of vocab and grammar rules, translation of text, and written exercises. By the end of the 19th century, the classical method came to be known as grammar translation method. So classical method and grammar translation method is the same, are the same. And what are the characteristics of classical method and grammar translation method? So there are some characteristics of grammar translation method and classical method. Those are classes are taught in the student's L1. Attention is given to lists of isolated vocab and grammar rules. Reading is given almost exclusive focus with related grammatical analysis. Translation exercises are performed, and little or no attention is given to oral production. During the time, classical method or grammar translation method aroused some pros and cons. Some people thought that grammar translation method or classical method is a method that easy to conduct since it doesn't require fluent knowledge of the foreign language by the teacher. However, most of the students considered that grammar translation method as a tedious process of memorizing vocab and grammar rules. So that is about classical method and grammar translation method. The second method in the early years is Gouin's series method. So the series method was discovered by Gouin, a French teacher. After having a bad experience in grammar translation method, Gouin did some research in language learning and found out that the series method is the appropriate method that could be applied in the learning process. So what is the series method? The series method is a method that teaches the student directly, without translation, and conceptually. without grammatical rules explanation. So the serious method can be done by giving the student a simple instruction sentences that are easy to receive. For example, the teacher will say these sentences to the student, and the student should repeat and practice the instruction. I walk to the door, I stop at the door, I stretch out my arm, I take hold of the handle. So that is about the serious method. So the series method was not gained much attention since the emergence of the direct method. The third method in the early years is the direct method. So direct method was found by Maximilian Ehrlich, and the basic premise of the direct method is no translation between L1 and L2. There are some characteristics of the direct method. Instruction was conducted exclusively in the L2. Oral communication and listening skill were taught in small classes. Methodology consisted mainly of modeling and practice. Every day, easily identified vocab was used, and grammar was taught inductively. The same as the previous method, the direct method also aroused some pros and cons. In the pro side, the direct method was considered a successful method and became popular in many countries. However, the direct method did not take well in public schools in which the school constraint of budget, classroom size, time, and teacher background. So in public school worldwide, the direct method was not as practical as grammar translation method. The fourth method that popular in early years is audiolingual method. So, audiolingual method was used for the first time by U.S. military-sponsored program during World War II to teach oral proficiency in other language. After that, in the middle of 20th century, audiolingual method spread broader into educational contexts to teach oral skill of foreign language. There are some key elements of audiolingual method. Those are pronunciation drills, repetition practice, and conversation exercises. Here are some characteristics of audiolingual method. Most language material was presented directly with as little use of a one. The material was usually presented in spoken dialogue form. Mimicry, memorization, and overlearning of language pattern were emphasized. Grammatical structure was sequenced by means of constructive analysis. Grammar and vocab were taught by inductive analogy and contextualized in dialogue. Great importance was attached to pronunciation, and course capitalized on the use of tapes, language lab, and visual aids. That's all about some methods that became popular in the early years. Now we will move to the next topic, the method in designer era. The first is community language learning. Since in the early years era focused on the teacher-centered learning, in 1950 Carl Rogers proposed student-centered learning. Inspired by him, Charles Curran 1972 up to 1976, proposed a new teaching method called community language learning. What is community language learning? Community language learning is a method that based on student-centered learning in which the teacher becomes a counselor for the student. So it means that the teacher will assist the student to reach the goal in a positive atmosphere. Here is the example of the implementation of community language learning in the classroom. First, the students sit in a circle and the teacher stands outside the circle. And then one of the students is asked to say something in Indonesian and the teacher translates it into English. Then the students repeat the teacher as accurate as possible. After that, another students repeat are asked to say something in Indonesian and the teacher translates it into English. The students repeat the teacher as accurate as possible and keep the activities till the conversation finish. That is about community language learning. The second method in the designer era is Suggestopedia. So, Suggestopedia was found by Georgy Lazanov, 1979. Suggestopedia is a method that is done by creating relaxing concentration in the classroom. For example, by using music, fun learning, colorful classroom, and etc. And the learning activities that could be applied in Suggestopedia are role play, drama, and reading. It is important for the teacher to apply this activity by using soft, fun, and comfortable seat, and it can be accompanied by soft music. The same as the previous method, Suggestopedia also aroused pros and cons. In the pro side, it was considered as a good method since the teacher should consider about the student's feeling. However, in the con side, the practicality of this method was an issue since music and comfortable chairs sometimes are available in some schools. That is about Suggestopedia. The third method in designer era is the silent way. So the silent way is a method in which the teacher should be silent as much as possible in the teaching and learning process. The silent way was found by Caleb Pategno, 1972. He stated that the students should develop their responsibility, autonomy, and responsibility in order to gain a new knowledge. So in the teaching and learning process, the teacher just provide single word or phrase stimuli with the properties such as words or word chart, and the students should discover about their understanding of the meaning and pronunciation of the words by themselves, with minimal corrective feedback from the teacher. Here are some characteristics of the silent way. Encouraging inductive learning by discovery, engaging in problem solving using new language material, and relating or mediating physical object to the new language. The silent way also arouses pros and cons in the society. In a good side, the silent way has some valid principles such as autonomous learning, discovery learning, and problem solving. However, it is considered as a harsh way method because sometimes the student need more guidance and correction in learning. Moreover, the teacher has no chance to encourage communicative atmosphere in the classroom. The next method that became popular in the designer era is total physical response or total physical approach and natural approach. So, total physical response was formed by James Archer, 1977, and it was inspired by the series method in which it stated that a new language could be gained by a series of simple actions. James Archer claimed that memory is increased if it is stimulated through association with physical activities. So, total physical response is a method that uses a series of simple action and physical activity to stimulate the students in learning the new language. So, the principle of total physical response is the student learn the foreign language by listening first, and it is followed by physical response, moving, grabbing, reaching, and etc. So this is the step of the total physical response. The first step is the teacher gives the student instruction. It can be imperative or question sentences along with the physical movement. The example of the instruction, pick up the book, walk slowly to the window and jump. Where is the book? Who is John? And after that, the teacher will ask the student to mimic the instruction. That is about total physical response. And now, what is the natural approach? The natural approach was found by Crescent and Terrell, 1983. The approach was similar to the comprehensible input approach, in which the student learned about the new language by using material that a little bit beyond the student's level. Total physical response and natural approach also have pros and cons. In the pro side, total physical response and natural approach offer a new insight for the language teaching profession. In the con side, total physical response and natural approach only have a good result for the beginner student. That's all about some methods in the designer era. Now we will move to the last topic, the methods in joining a new era. The first method in joining a new era is functional syllabus. So what is functional syllabus? Functional syllabus is a syllabus in which the content of language teaching is a collection of the functions that are performed when language is used. The principle of this syllabus is upon communicative purpose of the language. Functional syllabus is organized around communicative functions such as identifying, reporting, correcting, describing, and etc. There are some topics that can be included in the functional syllabus. Those are introducing self and other people, exchanging personal information, giving and getting direction, identifying and describing people, and talking about time. Functional syllabus also have pros and cons. Functional syllabus increases the usefulness of language instruction and reflects more on comprehensive view of the language than grammar syllabus. However, the students have considerable gaps in their grammar and lead to a phrasebook approach that focuses on teaching expression. That is about functional syllabus. The next method in the new era, in Downing new era, is communicative language teaching. Before we define what communicative language teaching is, Let's start with the communicative competence. There are some communicative competence. The first is grammatical. Grammatical is knowledge of and ability to use the form of language. The second is discourse. Discourse is knowledge of and ability to comprehend and produce stretches of language across sentences in both oral and written modes. The third is sociolinguistic. Applying sociocultural context to communication, including participant roles, information they share, and the function of communicative act. The fourth, strategy. Strategy refers to the use of verbal and nonverbal tactics to accomplish a communicative goals, including compensation for breakdowns. So, what is communicative language teaching? Communicative language teaching is an approach that encourages real-life communication in the classroom. So, communicative language teaching was found by Cannell and Swain, 1980, and here are some characteristics of communicative language teaching. The first is overall goals. Communicative language teaching suggests a focus on all of the components, grammatical discourse, sociolinguistic, and strategies of communicative competence. The second is language techniques. The language techniques are designed to engage learners in the pragmatic, authentic, functional use of the language for the meaningful purposes. The third is fluency and accuracy. A focus on student flow of comprehension and production and a focus on the formal accuracy of production are seen as complementary principles. Fourth is teacher role. The role of the teacher is that facilitator and guide the student. Fifth, student roles. Students are active participants in their own learning process. The sixth, focus on real-world contacts. Students in a communicative class ultimately have to use the language effectively and receptively in unrehearsed contact outside the classroom. And the last characteristic is autonomy and strategic involvement. Students are given opportunities to focus on their own learning process to raising their awareness of their own style, strengths, weaknesses, preference of learning, and through the development of appropriate strategies for production and comprehension. Communicative language teaching was considered as the most appropriate approach in language teaching. However, some people argue that communicative language teaching lacks focus on grammar and difficult to assess. So that's our topic today. If you have any question or comment, you can write it in the comment section below. See you in the next video. Goodbye.